The world, welcome back to Send It Rising. As I've mentioned many times on the show, I don't believe in coincidences. You know what that means. I know what that means. It means we have a guest on the show today. We live in what appears to be a chaotic universe. Is it chaotic? No, it is not. We learned from our guest on random number generators that it's actually difficult to create chaos because things are ordered. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest on the show today, American Express, Lululemon, Expedia. Do these ring any bells? Of course they do. You know these brands. He works with them. He's got a partner named Jen. TEDx. Have you ever wanted to be on a TEDx? He was on the board of TEDxVancouver. He knows everything you could possibly want to know about podcasting. The one, the only, Roger Nairn.
Hey, hi everyone. Super excited to be here.
Yes, and we are excited to have you because podcasting is where it's at. And if we went back in time 5 years ago, you weren't really doing this, were you?
No, not at all. I was working in the ad agency world.
And you found yourself with the vision in your head and the fear that comes along with that, right? If you could go back to talking to Roger Nairn 5 years ago, what would you tell him?
I would tell him, keep rolling, keep building, and don't be afraid to start.
And so how did you start? Let's get that story from you.
Yeah, that's a cool one. So I was working in the ad agency world, worked for big agencies. I met a couple friends through some radio stuff I was doing on the side, and we went out for beer one night, and we had a conversation about podcasts and who's doing it well, who isn't doing it well, where the opportunities were. And what we kind of landed on was, brands are trying to build podcasts, they're trying to grow audiences, but aren't doing it very well. So we made a pact that evening. I was going to take my agency experience, my marketing experience. My other partner, Jen, came from the media world as a journalist. And then at the time we had a third partner, and he came from the broadcast space, both traditional and digital. And we said, let's try this. Let's put the bare minimum product out in the market, see if there's any interest from anyone, and then we'll kind of roll from there. Because I tried to start businesses in the past, but I delayed. I feffed around. I was avoiding doing the hard stuff. So I said, listen, I'm not going to do this until we just build teensy bit at a time, see if there's any interest, and go from there. I went home that night. I put together a little message. I put it out on LinkedIn direct to 8 people. The second person who responded said, you're not going to believe this, but my wife is looking for this exact service for her company. Can you be in their office on Thursday? It was Monday at the time. Turns out that was that company's Sage Natural Wellness, one of the world's largest aromatherapy brands, wellness brands. We were in their office, had an amazing conversation, didn't have a name for our company, didn't have a website, didn't have pricing, didn't really have an idea of anything, but we were off to the races.
I love it. I love everything about it. First of all, you don't need beer, listeners, to start a company. I just want to be very clear.
Totally true
about that. But there was beer involved. I like this idea of a pact. I also love, and I've said this many times to the listeners on the show, people get really attached. And attachment, of course, is the root of suffering. Thank you, Buddha. To this notion that you need the gorgeous website, that the logo has to be perfect. And here we've got another anecdotal story of how you just don't. It's the passion, it's the drive behind it, and it's being willing to put yourself out there. And I assume you closed this business.
We did. They looked at us and said, send us your estimate. I'll never forget. We went for a walk around the neighborhood afterwards, kind of talking about pricing and offering. And we put something together, and they agreed on it, and we built it, and we worked with them for 3 years.
Incredible.
Yeah, we produced a podcast called Well Now, and we were super proud of it. And that was our first foray into the branded podcast world.
I'm so intrigued by where everything is going, because at the end of the day, the internet is only 3 things. It's a video, it's a photo, or it's text. That's it. And there's audio, I guess you could describe it.
There is audio, I was going to say.
But audio, photo that moves, I should say, and text. Those are the 3 elements. I got it wrong. And it's all just a play on those they're like a red. What are the primary colors? Do you remember? Red, yellow, and
Red, green, and
whatever.
blue.
Thank you. And all
Yeah.
colors stem from those. Those are
Yeah.
the primary colors of the painting of the internet. And this skill set of playing with one of them,
Mhm.
Send It Rising, the company that I happen to own, was blogging focused because I was a teacher. I was writing lesson plans. That's how we got into it. And so it was very much whatever that color that represents writing is.
Mhm.
And as we've evolved, I'm insecure now as a business owner because I feel like there's these other pieces of the puzzle, these other paints that I just don't have any experience painting with, which is why
Mhm.
I'm so glad to have you on the show because the audio world is just, it brings so much depth to a brand. And
Mhm.
so let's talk about that. So someone now, typically, they're larger clients, yes? Like I'm
Yeah,
hearing
I mean,
American
typically.
Express, Lululemon, because when you chatted with me backstage, you said there's a lot that you do: PR, artwork, custom music, you're shipping equipment, you're vetting guests, you're finding a host for the
Mhm.
show. I mean,
Mhm.
that's a lot of work.
Yeah. So first of all, I'll say, I mean, you have a podcast, so you are doing it. I think the biggest thing though is you've recognized that you have an audience that has a need, and you're delivering on servicing that need. So that's all we do with our podcast is we start with our clients, we sit down and say, okay, who's the audience? Is it an existing audience with the brand? Is it a new audience that you're looking to attract and have a conversation with? Once we're clear on that, we then ask the question, what does that audience need? Do they need to laugh? Do they need to cry? Do they need to learn something? Do they need to perhaps have some of their problems solved? Once we're clear on that, we then get to work on developing a podcast that's going to be able to service that. Because at the end of the day, podcast is an incredibly intimate medium. You and I are talking right now. I can hear you in my head, literally. You're like, it's like a whisper in my ears. Very few people listen to a podcast in a public setting. Occasionally I'll listen to a podcast with my wife in the car, but generally it's a, intimate medium. And so if we can deliver a ton of value in that format over the course of 20 to 30 minutes per episode in a medium that they're asking for, they're subscribing to it. We're not broadcasting to them. They're asking for it. Um, that's tons of value to that listener. So if you're a brand like Expedia and you have all this travel knowledge and all this understanding of the best places in the world to visit and the best, the safest way to travel during COVID and how to take your family to Disneyland for under $2,500, which is practically impossible these days. Like that's a ton of value for a traveler. And so that's how we deliver that podcast. Or if you're American Express, that most of your customers are business customers. And there's a lot of frankly struggling small business owners out there who are trying to battle through COVID and trying to get back in line with the business they used to have, or they're trying to navigate the diversity, equity, inclusion space right now and understand how best to service their diverse audience. So we develop a podcast that services that audience specifically. It just is great content that happens to be brought to you by that brand and developed by that brand. Now, it's important that that podcast can't be an ad. Nobody's going to listen to a 20 or 30-minute ad about Expedia or Lululemon or Amex, but they are going to listen to something that's going to deliver a ton of value to them.
Yes, this is why I love what you're doing because this concept of a corporation, cuerpo, I don't know what the Latin is, corpus probably.
Corpus, yeah,
Um,
probably.
yeah, like Corpus Christi.
Yeah,
Yeah, is
which might be
it's
the
a body.
corporation of Christie. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So a corporation, you're just the voice, which I love. So
yeah.
it's talking it's going beyond yourself. And I think a lot of folks get twisted and they let fear enter their mind and they get angry at corporations when they don't identify with the individuals within that corporation. It's
Mhm.
easy to look at the corporation as a whole and be very judgmental about them and are often right. I'm not saying corporations are these like benevolent, angelic institutions. They're
For
not.
sure. Yeah.
That being said, within a corporation, this idea of being its voice, having enough understanding of how ads are, they're not what they used to be. And
Mhm.
I can't almost sometimes believe that I'm in the world of ads because I hated them my entire life.
So did
I
I, and I
they're
worked
the
I worked
worst.
in them. But I will also say that I used to always say to my clients, like, people don't hate ads, they hate bad ads. You
Mm,
know, a good ad is actually delivering a ton of entertainment, or is connecting with you in an emotional level, or is delivering some sort of value to you. I mean, generally it's the one. I mean, there's a reason why people flock to the Super Bowl to watch those ads, because they're, for the most part, generally quite good and high production and, socially relevant in some way. It's mostly the ones that are bad that people think when they think of, advertising and bad ads. So I am the first to admit that what we're doing is not actually anything revolutionary or new. It's what we would call branded entertainment, or branded content, and that's been happening for decades and decades and decades. Like, the very first piece of branded content was actually the Michelin Guide, which came out in, oh God, I don't even remember, but pre-World War I believe, and it was put out by the Michelin Tire Company as a way to connect to the brand and explore, at the time, the roads of Europe, and visit little inns and visit little restaurants. So they put out this guide, and it's a ton of value. It's still around today. BMW came out with BMW films, a few decades ago, with Guy Ritchie as the director, and it's just an incredible high action film that happens to include BMW cars, and there's a nice connection. So all we're doing is creating great content for the podcast audience that taps into their needs and wants, and it just happens to be brought to you by some brands.
I love it. So the D in Disney always looked like a treble clef to me as a kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, Isney. I never figured out that was a D until very recently, just because my little child mind was always very strong. And I was watching Moon Knight the other day,
Nice.
which, it's so good. And it's on Disney Plus. And I'm thinking to myself, there was some dude named Walt, and now somehow Moon Knight is under his domain, literally his last name. Like, can you imagine, like, Nairn Plus?
Totally.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
logging into Nairn,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
watch my Nairn this and my Nairn that. And so that's just sponsored content from this idea of whatever Disney is, and Disney became synonymous with childhood magic.
For sure. Yes, absolutely. And has taken that and ran with it, in a number of different ways, whether it's their, whether it's their content, or it's their, toy line, or it's their, live experiences through their theme parks. There is a central sort of tenet, and it's magic and entertainment, and that's kind of permeated throughout everything that they do. And a lot of the brands that we'll work with are wanting to, like, either are or are wanting to be more, what I would say, sort of giving brands, less taking brands, more giving brands, giving in the form of content and providing value to their audience, versus just take. And so that's what we really try to tap into as early with them as possible.
Yes, karma is translated as action, and everyone sees it as the reaction, because the reaction is what affects us, and we don't necessarily take responsibility for our actions, knowing that there is no such thing as an action without a reaction.
For sure.
When we give, well, shocker, we tend to receive. So how, for example, when I'm doing these reels, I will sit and I'll have a moment of exhaustion where I'm over it. I don't want to do the extra editing thing. That's fine. It's just fine. Or was that take the best take I could do? Could I ride up to the top of the cul-de-sac again and go take one more pass and do a better take of that reel?
Yeah.
And so the more I give and I give and I give to the process of my own mind and time and energy and the editing, and should I capitalize it? That's what we're talking about here. I mean, I can only imagine the nuance, the technicalities, the to-do lists, did Brian get the email about the meeting at 3 for the microphone that we have to send? Like, because the quality on the last one, we all know, wasn't what it needed to be. Like all that goes into this.
And we have, last time I checked this morning, we have 20 productions we have 20 shows in production as we speak. So we have amazing project leads who are responsible for keeping us on track, on budget, on time. blend that with amazing producers that are creating our content, along with audio techs who are, obviously doing the recording and editing and making it sound incredible. And so we've been lucky enough to land on the right model, the right systems for how to do this, while also giving it the flex it needs to be different for everyone. When I say everyone, meaning the companies we work with, because the last thing I want is to create podcasts that all sound the same. That's not right. That's not serving the audience, because no audience is the same. That's not serving the brand, because no brand is the same. And so the day we become that, that company where you can kind of pick a package and it's going to be the same package that this guy got and the same package that this guy got, I think will be our downfall.
I totally get that. From the moment I've had Send It Rising, we refer to it as an RX or prescription, and the prescription is always different. Like
Different, for sure.
I mean, you wouldn't want to go to a doctor who's like, it's antibiotics for everybody.
Yeah. And it's tough. I mean, it's tough because that's not as easily scalable as other forms of doing this. And so I'm constantly asking ourselves, like, did we do the right thing when it comes to sort of the model and thinking about how we operate? But I keep going back to I'm the business guy in our company. My partner Jen, is our chief creative officer, and so she's constantly reminding. And I'm not trying to say that we need to change into something more cookie cutter, but she's constantly saying, like, we have to beat ourselves constantly and improve on the quality, and we're never going to get that if we're just that kind of cookie cutter. We call it two dudes in a Yeti, which is a couple guys in their basement making podcasts, which is nothing wrong with that. And that's how I started, but we get paid for higher quality and more strategic vision and things like that.
Every time I walk past Louis Vuitton, there's a line out the door.
For sure. Yeah. No, yeah.
I mean, and if you're talking American Express, Lululemon, Expedia, they don't want Target boutique.
No.
They're not interested in that.
They don't.
So you could create a completely different company. That would be my approach.
Mm-hmm.
Is you would go, okay, there's two companies. There's Louis Vuitton, and then there's Target.
Mm-hmm.
Is you want Target? Okay, we got Target for you all day, every day. Cost this is what you get. Here's your Louis Vuitton. They're different brands.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you said that. We've actually never really explored sort of doing an offshoot that would serve, because like, I'm not trying to bash that offering. That is something that is for sure in need. We've never really explored doing an offshoot like that. But that would be really interesting to explore, because I think there is tons of opportunity still out there.
The vast majority of all economies are small and mid-sized businesses.
For sure.
By a dominant margin all of the time.
Yeah.
And, they probably have 1,000 a month, 500 that they'd be willing to part with on a month to month sort of like, okay, I could do a podcast. Like, I'll give you $1,000. Like, what do we need to do?
For sure. Yeah. And actually, you can have a lot of success, staying small and being that sort of, lone wolf independent podcaster. I mean, obviously you're having a lot of success and so yeah, it's something that we should definitely be exploring.
It's, it could be a really fun conversation. And the other thing too, and I'll pick your brain on this, is reels, I know, are just embryonic in how dominant they're going to be. Everyone was talking about Instagram reels. I was late to that party. So I was sort of like, reel, well, I don't care. And then TikTok came out and I hopped on TikTok and I was like, my sister started making a lot of money. So Chelsea Smith Cosmetics, she's got this big California brand. She's actually Pretty Pomp now. She switched her brand name. But anyway, millions of likes. And I'm like, you know what? We're blood. I'll try it. I get on TikTok and I'm getting 500 views, right? As opposed to 15, right? 500, 600. And then I had one get 100,000. Yeah. And when I look at the watch time on a TikTok that has 100,000 views, it's over 300 hours. I think it's at like 320 hours of watch time. And so I went, oh, so then I started posting on TikTok, Instagram reels. And then because I cover social media news when I don't have a guest, I've been following Facebook. So Facebook, that owns Instagram, said, we need reels now too. And so they developed business and personal reels. And then here comes YouTube. They're like, well, we can't miss this party. And they actually came before Facebook, and they created YouTube Shorts.
Right.
So now there are 5 places where you can post reels. And so I think the offering for the small and mid-sized businesses, and that's our bread and butter, right? So pretty much all of our clients would fall into that category, would be to do podcast production and then cut up the podcast and put them on reels. And that would be the cookie cutter thing. It would be, we do XYZ for the podcast, and then we're going to edit some of that and put it on YouTube, Facebook Business, TikTok, and Instagram Reels.
Yeah, like what's your thoughts on sort of short form audio and its place in some of these spaces as well? Like do you think that there will, because obviously the audiences have a penchant for short form content, and you know, do you think it always needs to have a visual that goes with it? Do you think there will ever be a space for just short form audio?
I don't have an answer to that question.
No, I'm just curious. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of money to be made in small businesses who want a podcast, who know they should be doing reels, but it's just too much. It's overwhelming. The whole idea of it is just crazy. It's just too much to handle. They don't necessarily even want to be doing the reels themselves. And I think the mistake I've been making is we've been going out there wanting to train these clients. They don't need training. They can just hop on YouTube, figure out how to do a reel, and just do it. It's not that hard to figure out how to do a reel. What's hard is making it beautiful. Is understanding auto captioning. It's downloading CapCut and getting that. It's getting the file. It's dealing with the memory on your phone. It's coming up with ideas. There's everything that goes, the lighting, the audio, the lapel mic. And my big aha moment in our conversation has been that you get hosts for them. And that's not something I ever even considered for this offering. And so I'm rethinking.
And I'll explain, we have, so a lot of times our clients will say, we want the host to be from within our company, and we'll say, why? We'll have the conversation. And generally it's because they are the subject matter experts on X, Y, and Z. Well, then I would question whether we're getting too close to the brand. And are we going to really be able to have enough of a diverse, in-depth conversation if you're that close to the brand? Because podcast listeners expect there to be engaging, diverse, sometimes a little bit, spicy conversation. And I think just naturally you're not going to get that if you're sitting in the walls of the company. I mean, for the most part, nobody wants to listen to the CEO talk. We have had success with some people from within the brands, but generally we look for somebody outside. And the other reason is just actually a production reason. And that is, if we're going to, use Sally from the marketing team as our host, well, Sally's got a ton of things going on in her career already, and she's incredibly busy. And we don't want a host that is doing this off the side of our desk, because it's going to impact our timelines. It's going to impact the flow of our production. And so we also look for an outside host because they're generally coming from a hosting type background. Could be a radio, it could be somebody from radio, could be a journalist, could be a celebrity, but it's somebody who generally knows how to have a good conversation, have an engaging conversation, poke and prod in the right places in that conversation so that it's bringing out the right juice from the guest. But then at the same time, they're arm's length away from the brand, so they can have a little bit more brave conversations. It's not, our podcasts aren't live like yours is, which I love this medium. But we do have the flexibility of, saying the wrong thing and trying it again or editing it accordingly. So having an outside host can be a bit scary for some brands, but at the same time, we are trying to put some general brand safety around those conversations that they're having. But we've had a ton of success with it.
I love it. And I love it for a few reasons. One, what Malcolm Gladwell and his 10,000 hours bit, you ever heard that? 10,000 hours of mastery. Hosting is its own skill.
Oh, dude. Yeah, for sure. It's, as you've got to have a map for how you want the conversation to generally flow. You have to be listening to what the guest is saying, but at the same time thinking about, either a response or question back. You have to understand where there's more opportunity in that conversation to perhaps pull out more, or recognize when, you're not going to get anywhere with this sort of conversation and you should sort of take a beat. Everything from pacing of the conversation, making sure that we're not going too fast, taking time. But I think the biggest thing is that you are, as the host, a good host should be sort of the advocate on behalf of the listener. You're the listener's sort of voice in the room. So you should be thinking about kind of, it's a very empathetic role. You have to be thinking about the audience. What are some of the questions they might want to know? What are some of the things that they want to learn, and be constantly channeling that. But at the same time, respecting what kind of an interview is this, and kind of be trying to plus it up as best as possible as you're conducting it.
Yeah, it's kung fu.
Yeah, it is. That's a good way of putting it.
100% as hard work. That's all it is. So like, you'll have these Michelin star restaurants in China where they create one dish and have only done that for 3 generations.
Totally.
They're going to be really good at that.
Yeah. Have you seen there's a little stand in, I want to say Singapore, where all the guy makes is chicken and rice. And it's the best chicken and rice in the world. And I think he just won his first star a couple of years ago. But it's, he's mastered it. Or Jiro Dreams of Sushi.
Oh yeah, let's go.
Yeah, so good.
So do we want Sally from marketing to be starting from beginner novice level? Is that really what we want for this brand? And I think you answered it. No, that's not.
Yeah, I mean, generally, no. We don't want to ever say no out the gate without having a bit of a conversation. I will say that in the cases where we have had Sally from marketing be that voice with no hosting experience, we will train Sally. We will have a full hosting train protocol where we are doing mock interviews. We're, trying to really get him or her comfortable in front of a microphone. That's the other thing too, is not everybody's the same in front of a microphone. So having that, it's kind of like, what's the saying? Everyone's brave until they get punched in the face or something like that. It's everyone thinks they can talk the talk and walk the walk until they get in front of a microphone, and then it's a whole different story. So we'll do what needs to be done in order to get it to a good place. We have a ton of experience doing that.
Yeah, it's boxing is less about delivering a punch. It's more about taking one.
Yeah, for sure. That's for sure.
So I think that there's something there. As we wind down the show with 3 minutes left, I want to make sure that folks know where to reach and all that stuff. So we'll get to that in a second. But I really do think that there's a fun internal dialogue that you can have incorporating reels somehow into the promotion of the shows if you're not already doing that.
I'll be honest, we're not doing it as much as we should be. And so that is something that I want to be exploring more.
Yeah. So we'll chat backstage. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll let you know how the conversation goes with Roger Nairn next episode.
Yeah.
But ladies and gentlemen, youtube.com/senditrising. If you're like most folks, you're listening after the show. If you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, thank you so much for the 12 other podcast platforms that we are currently streaming on. If you want to see me longboard with my bare feet, tiktok.com/senditrising, @senditrising, pretty much everywhere.
Now, you got to try longboarding with a guest. So we're both.
You know what, Roger? When you're in town,
we're both on the board.
Next time, so Roger, you heard it here. He promised that he'll go longboarding with
when I'm
me
in Vegas.
And when he's in Vegas, longboard through a casino and get kicked out. How's that for content?
That sounds like a good show.
Well, swing by. Quick shout out. We're doing
it's like comedians in cars getting coffee.
You got it. We're doing a Las Vegas influencer meetup. If you find yourself in Las Vegas at the Luxor, second Thursday of every month, check us out there. That's super fun at the HyperX Esports Arena. Good times. Ladies and gentlemen, let's make sure we know where to reach Roger Nairn. Where do we do that?
Thank you. Yeah. Check us out at jaraudio.com. We got a really great resource on our blog as well for, a number of different topics in the podcast space, but also mostly connected to brands and podcasts. You can also subscribe to our newsletter. You can also find us on LinkedIn as well as myself personally on LinkedIn. And don't hesitate to reach out.
Jar Audio, that's JAR space audio, like they're jarring up magic, like Walt Disney. And then bringing it to the public.
Love it.
Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for swinging by the show today. We'll see y'all next time.